Hi guys, welcome back to a glimpse into what could be my dream future. Today we're going to check out a very cool and also somewhat extensive refit of a Deerfoot 61 in what could very possibly be the world's coolest living/workshop arrangement. Ava and I are gonna head back to Trinidad in the very near future, and I am very excited to get started on our to-do list to get Athena ready for the 3,000 nautical mile trip from Trinidad and all the way up to Maine. But today, let's go check out this Deerfoot 61. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the topsides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. It's about 30 minutes to our destination. I know some of you think we're nuts considering doing another somewhat extensive refit so shortly after having finished Athena. But yeah, to be honest, I don't know if we're going to be selling Athena this year or if we'll wait a bit. We don't really know what we're going to do, but fortunately there are only really two options in play here. It's either we sell Athena and start a refit of a bigger boat, or we keep sailing aboard Athena.
And to be clear, we are nuts for thinking about doing another refit, but really we have no idea what's to come next. You know, we try to make plans during sailing, but those plans always seem to take on a life of their own. But we are doing a lot of talking about what's coming next. We're definitely going to be looking at some boats, and if the perfect boat comes along, then that's great. If not, then we are more than happy to stay aboard Athena.
After a beautiful morning drive, we have arrived at Tim and Vicky's place. Now, at first glance, this may look like an ordinary house, but it has a bit of a secret superpower. That secret superpower is the fact that the house is actually mainly a workshop, but here is Tim, and yeah,
Good morning.
good morning. Let's head inside. If we walk in through the front door here, through the living room, across the living room, there's this unassuming door here. If we open that, ta-da! A giant Deerfoot 61. Talk about having a short commute to work. If this was my workshop and house, going to work would be as simple as stepping through that door. Tim built this workshop specifically for this boat, and if you look here at the bow, there is only a few feet of room here. The transom of the boat is a few feet away from this big gate, which I'm assuming is how he's going to get the boat out of here eventually. While we're at the transom of the boat, I should point out the fresh supply of West System epoxy here. I should have, when I started the refit of Athena, done the same thing. Buy the drum, it's a lot cheaper than buying the smaller kits as you go. When Tim is going to be finished with his Deerfoot 61 here, it is going to be a highly modified Deerfoot 61, complete with a brand new deck, a brand new keel, brand new rudder, and also brand new interior. Here are some of the plans Tim has for the boat, but maybe we can have him explain this in a minute. The base of this amazing refit, as I've mentioned, is the Deerfoot 61. The Deerfoot 61 was designed by Steve Dashew. Steve and Linda Dashew were cruisers before they became boat designers. Very well-known and very experienced cruisers, and in fact they kind of wrote the book on cruising, or multiple books. This is one of them, the Offshore Cruising Encyclopedia. Now today all of their books are available for download for free from their website as PDFs, and I'll include a link for their website down in the description. Steve, in the pursuit of the ultimate cruising boat design, was the mastermind behind boats such as the Deerfoots, the Sundeers, and of course the Beowulf. And all these boats are really amazing, and they share kind of a common trait, that is that they're really long boats with a relatively narrow beam, and they're all big boats. They're all in the mid-50s up to 80 foot. If you want to see a different example of a Deerfoot, then our friends over at Ran Sailing, Johan and Malin, they actually did a tour of a Deerfoot 68 when they sold their first Ran. And that was a really cool video if memory serves. If you want to watch that video, I'll also include a link for that down in the description. Tim, why did you choose the Deerfoot?
Well, I'd always been interested in them because we had bought a Gozzard 36, and we were actually in the Annapolis Boat Show in 1989, and one of the first of the Deerfoot 61 from New Zealand was there, called Condor. And I had read Steve's books and followed Steve and really admired the design. Never thought I could own one. But we came across this one much later, and it was in a boatyard in Maine, and it was unfinished, and the business had folded up due to the luxury tax that they had introduced at one point, our government. And I purchased the hull and some equipment that came with it, but not too much, and decided to do the crazy thing of finishing this boat out.
So you found the Deerfoot, and then you built the house and the workshop?
Yep, so we were living aboard a 36-foot Gauser at the time. We'd been living aboard for about 8 years, I guess, and did some sailing on that boat. And we had to transport the boat from Maine to Maryland, where we were living, find a piece of land and build the shop and put it all together so that we could begin the project.
So here you kind of have the original layout of the boat and also what you're planning on doing, right?
Correct, yeah. So this was the original layout, which had sort of 3 staterooms in it. 2 pretty small ones in the aft end of the boat, and we've changed it from midships forward basically. So sticking with what's really conventional, so when you come down the companionway, you have the head to port and the nav station to starboard, and then the next thing is the galley. But we've eliminated the 2 staterooms in the back end of the boat and instead have a pretty large engine room and a pretty nice sized head with a shower back here, and kind of an unconventional area here where it's sort of a stateroom, but it's got partial walls that can be like curtained off if you like, and a sort of double bed here that can be used for lounging and stuff as well with everything open. So when you come down the companionway, it's a big open concept all the way to the forward bulkhead where the mast is, right through the salon area where we will redesign this slightly with pilot berths on either side, and it'll be slightly different, but still the master stateroom in the forward like the original boat. And our intention is to have it set up this way so we can have, when we have guests on the boat, we can keep them forward in the master stateroom with their own head, and we'll stay in the aft end of the boat where we have sort of total control and we're not disturbing our guests and stuff when we're operating the boat, and they can help as they like. So that's sort of the idea behind the design. It's a little unusual for a 60-footer, but we think it will work really nice.
When looking at the project here, it's very clear that the deck is new, and I think you mentioned that it's actually been completely redesigned also?
Yes, the original deck was cut up in sort of a dispute between the boatyard that was storing the Deerfoot at the time when the company went out of business, and destroyed. So we didn't have the ability to get a hold of that deck or a mold for it, so we had to have the deck redesigned, and we basically went with deck beams and plywood. Easier to build, don't have to worry about removing core when we're adding hardware and things like that, so it gives me the ability to move things around as I desire and if things change in the future and stuff. And I think it's a pretty good design. It's a 1708 fiberglass on top of it. So it should be pretty durable. It's a pretty durable marine plywood. So it's a little heavier, so we did increase the draft of the boat to sort of compensate for that. So the displacement remained the same.
Outside of the workshop in a little separate garage, Tim has the new keel. Because you had a brand new keel built for the boat, right? And
we did.
You changed the design a little bit also.
Yeah, the things we changed was we had to have the deck design done by an architect for the deck. We changed the rig, made her a little taller, and we had a new keel and rudder design to modernize that. The original Deerfoots had a pretty shallow draft and not a very good airfoil sort of shape. So the keel was then built in Canada by Cantor Yachts. We were lucky to get the lead at no cost that was donated to me. So it was actually shielding lead from a radiation vault.
Speaking of the lead, that's going to go in these holes here, and then those are going to get welded up. And above those, there is a tank up here. So yeah, that's really good for getting the center of gravity low and also just utilizing the space inside of the keel. So this is a small fortune worth of lead here. How did you come across all of this lead, Tim?
Well, I worked in radiation oncology as an engineer doing particle accelerator installations, and a Volt was being decommissioned. They're usually made of like concrete with walls as much as 6 feet thick, but you can use lead if you don't have the room for that 6 foot of concrete, and the lead is like 2 inches of lead is equal to about a foot of concrete. So this particular batch of lead was in one wall in this vault, and it was offered to me if I removed it. So got a bunch of friends together, including my wife, and bit by bit we put it into the back of a U-Haul. So yeah, it was pretty crazy, but quite a find. I've used it for not just going into the keel, which it eventually will, but we use it all the time for various clamping, projects and things. It's really great to have this stuff around.
And then you told me about these plates that you have laying on top of the lead. What is this?
That's called cerebin. For all intents and purposes, it looks and behaves like lead, but it has a melting point like just over 100 degrees.
Yep.
So it was also scrap from a department. Somebody had given it to me. And I thought it would be great to be able to melt that and lock in these pieces as I load them into the keel. So when people wind up in an oncology department, there's 2 types of treatments that you can get from an accelerator. One is an electron beam type therapy, and one is photons. And in some cases, there's unusual machines that use neutrons as well. But these are for electron treatments, so they don't have to be very thick because you're just shielding electrons, and the shape of this is what the tumor would be, or the area that they want to treat. And these go into some applicators as they're running the machine and treating the patients.
So that's why all the holes in these are different shapes.
Different shapes, yeah.
Let's head up on deck and take a look at the new deck, because as everything else with this boat, it is very cool. As you can see, most of the cockpit is done. There's cockpit combing that's going to go on there, and the rest of the deck is almost done too. There's a big open gap there in the middle. Tim has left that open to be able to get stuff in and out of the boat.
So the deck construction is marine plywood with 1708 glass over it. It's put on in 3 layers of 1/4 inch. And you can see at the furthest extreme is only 1 layer, and they're all scarfed. So you come back and there's a 2nd layer and then a 3rd layer, and you can see the scarf joints where I'll be picking it up to take the deck out further.
All of the solutions on the boat are really well thought out, and this hatch here, the companionway hatch, is another example of that. So Tim, maybe you could demonstrate?
Sure. What makes it a little unique is it's actually on some nice rollers, so it rolls really nicely, and you'll see when it comes all the way out, it drops down, and it's actually dropping down onto a gasket, a really nice firm gasket, so it's actually sealing the opening as well. And the doors, companionway doors, also have gaskets, and the hatch drops over the top of those doors, so kind of locking everything in place. It has thermoplane acrylic in it, so there's an airspace. There's acrylic on both sides of that airspace, so it's well insulated. And it's built with plywood skins with balsa coring, and then 1708 glass again on the top. So it's a fairly heavy construction and pretty difficult to break. It'd be difficult to break into. That's why the lenses are small too, to make it pretty hardened. There'll be a hood that'll be assembled here eventually that'll transition into seat backs, which we still have to build. So, works pretty nice and easy. And then the piece de resistance is a screen system, which just pulls out from underneath of there. It's under the deck. There's a set of doors that I've taken them off just to protect them for now. But it's a little bifold door that just flips out. It's really easy to operate and really easy to use. Basically copied this design from a previous boat that I owned, so I can't take credit for the engineering, but we really liked it and found it to be really effective.
Here in the aft end of the cockpit, there's a big hatch you can remove just aft of the binnacle to get access to the generator compartment. If we take a peek down here inside of this custom built sound insulation box, there's a next gen 5.5 kilowatt genset. Looking around inside of the genset compartment, it's obvious that Tim puts a lot of effort into details. It's really, really nice in there. Of other note here in the cockpit, there are also 2 propane lockers over on the starboard side, there's an empty one, and then in the one here next to me, there's a cylinder in there. As with everything else on this boat, this was built by Tim, and he actually showed us some photos of building this cylinder that the propane tank sits inside of. He's done a really, really good job. Having gone down the temporary companionway steps here, we're now inside of the hull. There's a head here on the port side. That watertight door leads into the engine compartment. And then if we turn around, then you can see there's a bulkhead there, cabin in there, and a forward head. If we continue panning around, if you remember from the drawings, the galley is going to go here. And if we then continue aft, this is the head, and it is actually pretty much done. As you can see, there's a mirror over there, a little sink, head here, and a separate shower. Again, all of this built by Tim. Moving to the starboard side of the boat, behind this amazingly nice watertight door and this watertight bulkhead is the engine compartment. There's a diesel tank over here, little work tub over here, and then a brand new engine and, well, tons and tons of room. Here inside of the engine compartment, I basically have standing headroom. This is luxurious. But if I sit down here next to the brand new Yanmar, you can see I'm next to the diesel tank that has a little sight here, so you can see how much diesel is in there. And then below the diesel tank is the fuel system manifold. On here is going to go a really nice panel that Tim has already had made, and as you can see, it's very thoroughly labeled. Looking at the engine here, there's a giant high output alternator there. I think Tim mentioned it was 3 kilowatts. And then over here, because it's a shaft driven boat, as you can see off of the shaft here, there's another little alternator. Moving ever so slightly forward, another great example of Tim's attention to detail is the shower sump pump here underneath the cabin sole. The cabin sole is Cruiser board with 1708 on both sides, so that should be a very nice squeak-free cabin sole. But yeah, look at this shower sump box. That is a thing of beauty. Moving right forward of the shower sump pump is the next little compartment here, and in there is a very well protected through hull. Tim built this little, for lack of a better word, wall around it to make sure nothing can hit it. One of the things I really enjoyed during the refit of Athena was to try different techniques every once in a while. And all the bulkheads here in the boat are glassed or tapped in the traditional manner, at least the one I'm familiar with, except for this one bulkhead here, the one into the head. That is tapped in a little bit of a special way. This bulkhead is the only plywood bulkhead on the boat, and that's also why it's tabbed a little bit different. The way of tabbing this bulkhead was inspired by...
Bulkheads!
Yes, apparently a French boat manufacturer that used this really cool technique for tapping their bulkheads. Little openings are made in the plywood, and then glass is laid up in through that opening onto the side of the hull. It also has traditional tabbing on there, but this is a really interesting detail. Before we move any further forward, I wanted to show you this little area here underneath the companionway steps. That's the engine right there, and here is the sea chest. So that's one single through hull supplying a lot of different doohickeys with seawater. Tim built the sea chest here. It is composite. The lid here is of course metal, and there's a little strainer basket in there, but other than that, it's all fiberglass and epoxy. And it also has a little light in there that you can turn on so you can see what's going on inside of the sea chest. Moving forward, I just gotta be careful not to fall here. Whoops. We get into the forward cabin. As you guys saw on the drawings, there's going to be a big bunk over here, and then forward of that is the other head, which Tim has also made really good progress on. There's a shower in there, and of course also another super awesome little sliding door. If we move inside of the shower here, you can see this little seat for sitting on here, and all of this Tim built using balsa core. Now in Athena I used a lot of plywood, but I think for the next boat, building it like Tim has done here, ooh, that would be much nicer. Tim's project here is I mean, I'm at a loss for words. It is really amazing. Now, before we get out of here, there's one last little stop. This is a storage trailer of his, and in here is a bunch of stuff, but amongst other things, the binnacle he's built. Like anything else Tim has built for the boat, it is absolutely immaculate. This thing is perfect, and it has a really cool feature in that this box here slides back and forth. That's where the wheel is going to attach, and that means you can push the wheel back and forth. So if you're coming in to tie up, you can pull it back so you can stand on top of the seats and see where you're going and still have the helm be at a comfortable position. Another thing of note here in the storage trailer is this door. There's two of these, and they're for the transom. Now looking at this side, it looks pretty unassuming, but if we flip it over, holy smokes. This thing is of course designed to be watertight, but also this is just a freaking marvel of engineering. This is incredibly spiffy. This bit of red line here is for locking the hatch. So right now, these little doodads here, they're down, so that means it's locked. But if we pull the red line, you can see them go up. So that means you can open the hatch. We're gonna end this week's video here back in front of Tim and Vicky's awesome Airbnb where Ava and I have been staying for a little bit. And as you might have been able to tell from this video, I am thoroughly impressed with the work Tim has done aboard the Deerfoot, and seeing that work really makes me want to get back to another somewhat extensive refit, but we'll see what the future holds. In next week's video, I am going to go back to Trinidad. Ava is going to go to Budapest with her sister for a bit of work, but yeah, I'll get back to DIY aboard Athena. So yeah, I hope to see all of you guys there. And as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!